I literally called Olivia and I was like, I'm getting on a flight in 10 minutes, but I have this idea. I think you'd be a great co host. Will you start the podcast with me? And she said yes.
Maya and Olivia, thank you for joining me here today on the Go at Manav. Could you please tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. It's really, really great to be on the podcast. I guess we should clarify. I'm Maya.
I'm
This
Olivia.
is Olivia. The reason why we're both here together is that we run a podcast called Not on Our CV, well, not on my CV, which we could talk about in more detail. But outside of that, I work at a fintech startup. We both live in London. Yeah, that's probably me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'm in product. I work in tech, more of a scale up. And I pretty much that is my life. That and this podcast with Maya.
Oh, amazing. Well, this is the first time I'm actually recording a podcast with two people. So obviously, it's so exciting that I'm actually recording virtually with two people as well. For those that do not know beforehand, I was so worried about how we're going to fit two people together on the call, but it seems to work out perfectly fine.
I know
But
we're just really cozy. I was saying earlier, Maya just like turned to me and she was like, "Does this like proximity make you uncomfortable?" I was like, "Well, weird thing to say." Like,
Well, for people listening, how I met Maya and Olivia was through a friend of mine, Idris. He introduced me their podcast, Not on My CV, and I went to their podcast second season launch event, which was incredible. And that's how I got to connect with both. We've just been supporting each other since then. They came to my podcast panel discussion event and been watching the podcast. And it's been so great to have this collaboration together. The first two people in my podcast, as opposed to interviewing just one person. So let's go back for people probably wondering, how do you both know each other?
well, we met at uni, and I always say like Maya's one of those friends that like usually people make friends that are just, you're on the same course, you're at the same school, you're in the same college. And so they're kind of chosen for you just because they're there versus I feel like Maya's one of those friends that I actually made because we had similar interests and we made a similar choice, which was the one of both being on this committee for our Women in Business Society in Cambridge. And so we both shared that interest. I was organizing events. You were president. You were my president.
Good times.
And that's how we met, really.
Yeah, it was really funny because at uni we would meet up outside of Women in Business Committee events and we'd pretend we'd talk about society, but we just used to catch up on each other's lives. And that's how we realized that we're actually becoming very good friends.
That's so cool. And was this during your first year, second year, or third year?
Oh, I feel like it was second year for me, first year for you.
Yeah, I think we got closer like towards when I was in second year, you were in third year, but we first met when I was in first year.
Awesome. Okay. And how would you describe your university experience?
I feel like we might have different responses. So for context, yeah, we went to Cambridge. I'd say I unsurprisingly found the academics super tough and I didn't really enjoy them. So I studied economics and the whole thing was just very theoretical. But what I did enjoy was everything outside of that. So the college experience. So for those of you who don't know, everyone is based in a college and you do a lot of events just for your college. And as well as that, there are a lot of uni-wide societies. So come with for me, like Women in Business was a really big like part of my whole university experience and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's funny because we have answered that question before and it is quite different. So for me, I always say I am so much happier now. And it's not like I was unhappy at uni. I felt like maybe superficially I was happy, but I just feel like certain things have clicked in my life now that they didn't then. Like I think I always came across as very confident, but I think now I realize that actually having the proof points of actually being really successful in my career and in our podcast and starting this community together, it just has given me more confidence in the fact that I am actually good. I can do things. And versus previously, I think I had a bit of imposter syndrome of like, I don't know, I always felt like, oh, I got into this uni because I don't know, it was more luck. I feel like now I've just sort of realized that I think I needed that. And so at the time I had a slightly less sense of self, I want to say. Yeah, much more fulfilled nowadays, I think. And I think work life just suits me so much better. I just like the whole concept, I think is so weird. Like the whole concept of like working so much, but then one exam moment determining everything versus like the concept of giving every day and every day counting and just showing up being the point. I think that is so much more fulfilling and aligned with what makes me feel good day in, day out.
And we're aligned on that. I
Yeah.
hated exams.
God, this takes me back to high school. I did the IB diploma. I did not do A levels. I did not do the whole, yeah. So our exams were taken at the end of 2 years studying. You do internal assessments, but you do your final exams.
I think it's nuts looking back. I don't know how I did it.
Same, to be honest. But yeah, so actually moving forward now. So you guys graduated from Cambridge. I'm guessing you both moved to London after that.
Yes.
We did. I mean, it was COVID year, so a bit of a blip for us all. But after
Man.
that, yes.
Yeah. And what were both of your first jobs?
It's so funny because when I first read this question, I thought you were talking about like first ever job, and so I said to Olivia, like, I'm going to explain that I worked in a cafe when I was at school, and she was like, I don't think that's what people want to know.
Good to know. Yeah.
Good for you.
My first job outside of university, I went to a US bank based in London, and I worked in sales and trading. I was in the equity sales team. And for context, I did the spring week, the internship, and then the full time. I wouldn't say it was my choice. I think I just went down the natural route of I'm an economist and I should go and do what everyone else is doing and join a big finance firm. I realized on day one it wasn't for me, but that was my first career.
Yeah, I think I did a bit of the opposite, or rather, I was meant to start out in corporate with a kind of down the consultancy route, and I'd worked so hard for that offer, and I remember it meaning the world when it came through. But then I think it was mainly driven by the fact that I graduated during COVID, and so all of those kind of graduate scheme routes were just being delayed. And there was another opportunity that came up of joining a super, super early stage startup that happened to be really aligned with what I was doing outside of work, which was getting really involved with these tech communities like Code First Girls, getting people into coding from non-computer science backgrounds. That was kind of that, but with a business model around it. And so it was a natural fit. And I ended up ditching the corporate offer to start in a startup, which I think really was one of the best decisions I ever made, but at the time was really, really hard. But I've never really looked back. I think in a way, like, yes, my career could have been great either way, but I think it just was slightly quicker with a better head start by taking this decision. So I feel really grateful that that occurred. I always say it's like probably the only good thing that came out of COVID for me.
Wow. I mean, I have now this very interesting question to ask. For you, Olivia, this question is about, would you say if it wasn't for COVID-19, would you have still taken that job?
I don't think so. No. In fact, I can say that with confidence. No, I would not have, because it just felt so much more natural to go to uni with my corporate job, be in a graduate scheme with other grads, and I could just totally see my parallel life looking that way. And I feel like I would never have, like, this other job offer came up because someone DM'd me on LinkedIn and I literally blanked him the first time. And and I always say, like, thank God you double texted, because like it changed my life. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so serendipitous sometimes.
Absolutely. Now, this question goes to both of you, and it's about your 20s so far. Obviously, we're living in our 20s in a very chaotic time, but how have you guys taken risks in your 20s so far?
I feel like I've taken quite a few risks, but I want to say they're like calculated risks. I feel like my 20s, I think everyone's 20s are just pure chaos, right? Like you're moving around so much, you're trying to figure out what's right for you, you're comparing yourself to other people, you feel this time pressure to have it all figured out. And I think
Absolutely.
in a way that chaos has actually encouraged me to take more risks, because when when it didn't feel right working in finance, I decided that actually maybe there was a different path out there that was better for me. And I did look at other people in startups and realize that that's what I wanted to do. And then same with pivoting more towards the commercial aspect of startups. It's like always having that question internally of, is this what I want to do right now? And if it's not, making those decisions. So I'd say I've probably taken quite a bit of risk in terms of making like job moves and making difficult choices. But I'd say that all calculated risk, right? It really depends on your circumstances, but we're all in our early 20s. Most of us don't have other people that rely on us. And so it does feel easier to do it now. And I think what's really nice about building this with Olivia is when you're around people with that type of mindset, it really encourages you to do the same. When I left Morgan Stanley, everyone in the firm said to me, what is she doing? Like, has she gone mad? Has she actually lost the plot? Whereas now I'm surrounded by people every day, including yourself, who are like, oh, what's this new thing you're building? What's your side hustle? When are you starting your own business? And that's such a nice mentality to be around because it fosters more risk
Yeah.
taking.
Makes such a difference, doesn't it, to have like the right voices around you. It can make you feel so isolated when you're surrounded by people who aren't your people. Feel really alone. I feel like, I don't know, like I'm actually extremely risk averse. I don't associate with the word risk. I feel like probably the riskiest decision I ever made was ditching my like corporate career route in order to join the startup. But even so, it was so pondered because I'd sort of been working for the startup for about 4 months and then I had to ditch the offer. And so it's sort of like I had validated my choice quite a lot and pondered it quite a lot. So I am more of a planner, but I do think like I guess my the biggest risk for me has been sort of maybe ignoring my gut instinct. I feel like I have a really good, like a really strong gut feel. And so I know when I'm not in sync with myself, when some area of my life doesn't feel quite right. And so I feel like the biggest risk I could personally take is maybe not listening to that. And there's been some instances in my life where even outside of careers, like relationships, where I just haven't listened to that. And I feel like, whoa, that was a lot of wasted time. we could have got to this far sooner. And so, yeah, but I wouldn't say I take a lot of risks otherwise.
Interesting. This actually now leads to my next question because we're talking about risks, being bold. But is there something for both of you guys, Maya and Olivia, you wish you learned sooner in your 20s, for example, or earlier?
Yeah, so much. Not all of that is accomplishments, right, that you can put on your CV, not to plug our podcast, but like some of it is just growth and character development. I'd say a big one that I know now that I wish I knew early in my career is that your career isn't just your job, your 9 to 5, or however long it is that you go into the office to do. It's everything that comes with that. So the network that you build outside of your job, also the skills that you develop yourself in your own time. And no one's going to lay out the path for you of how to exactly, upskill, how to build a network. You have to be proactive enough to do it yourself. And that's what will set you apart.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good point.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think a big learning for me, we were reflecting on that actually in our season finale a few months ago, where I was like, actually, this sense of resilience that comes from creating your own stability when you kind of have like when a problem arises, it's so tempting to be like, I need to solve it, or I just cannot move forward with my life right now. It's like I need
Yeah,
to solve it. And actually kind of realizing that even if you can't solve it right now, that's okay. Like you don't have to put your whole life on hold, and actually you can kind of create your own stability around you so that external factors don't actually bother you so much. I think that's something that really affected me early on in my 20s, and now I feel like a lot more in control. Like it's felt like I've unlocked a level of adulting.
yeah.
It's about time.
Yeah.
I think it really does hit when we just turned 25, isn't it? It's just the prefrontal cortex, and now we're just adulting at
Yeah.
the stage.
Do you know what I
Really.
mean? God, because like a few years ago, I'm like, God, I can never have kids. Can you imagine? Feeling responsible for like, I literally have another human I need to take care of, and like, I can't even take care of myself. It's like, when I have a
I know.
problem, I just like everything spirals, and it's like, no, now it's sort of, I feel a lot more in control.
Yeah, that's really good. Both of your answers were great, by the way. I've learned from that as well, and I could probably relate to the whole taking risks. And wow, there were so many things we messed up in our 20s, but we learned. That's the point. We just grow from it. But talking about growth and taking challenges now, for I guess the most anticipated question I've been wanting to ask you guys is, tell us a bit more about Not on My CV and how did this idea come about?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess to give you the background, an avid podcast listener, that person who listens to a podcast on the tube when they're getting ready, every moment of the day that they can. And I guess I was listening to all the classic, Grace Beverly podcast, Diary of a CEO, How I Built This, and I know Olivia was as well. And I loved them and I found them super motivating, but I found them very difficult to relate to. They were often interviewing people who were the most successful CEOs, founders, 20, 30 years into their career. Whilst it was very inspiring, it felt actually more stress inducing because it felt like they were so far away from me and I had no path to get towards them. And even when they would talk about their previous kind of failures, right? And I say failures because they would always look back with rose tinted glasses. And I guess I just kept thinking to myself, there's a real gap for supporting people like ourselves who are super ambitious, clearly going somewhere very exceptional, but they are currently still a work in progress. They're struggling, they're in the journey. And so I wanted a podcast or a forum where we could chat to people similar to ourselves and share the real highs and lows of progressing in your career, share the struggles, give some relatable advice, and be more relevant for people like us. And then how it directly came about with Olivia is that I was in the airport and
And I was at the
yeah,
airport.
we were actually both in the airport
Oh,
Not
by
the same
chance.
airport.
And
wow.
I was speaking to a friend of mine who had actually met in a startup community, and I was telling him how I want to launch a podcast, and he said, "Well, why don't you just do it? You keep making excuses. Like, start it right now." And I said, "I need a co-founder." And he goes, "Think of someone in your head and message them right now." And so, thanks to him, I literally called Olivia, and I was like, "I'm getting on a flight in 10 minutes, but I have this idea. I think you'd be a great co-host. Will you start the podcast with me?" And she said yes.
Yeah, which I think is also just like,
Wow.
it was such a bold move, but felt so right. Because it's not even like, we would catch up every kind of other month or so, but it's not like we would be constantly seeing each other in each other's lives. So I can imagine just like calling up that friend that you catch up like, every other
Absolutely.
month occasionally, and you're literally like, start a podcast with me. But I instinctively was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
you can do it.
Okay.
And
Now I have two questions for you, Maya. First question is, how long was this idea in your mind before you made that call to Olivia?
That's a really good question. I should mention that I made 10 of the calls. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
I would
I'm
actually be really
joking.
hard. I
Oh.
do that.
I'm joking. I think it was in my mind for at least a year, if not longer.
Wow.
And I think because it was just as I was going through my career, right? And as I was feeling, a bit like struggling or going through a really difficult time, feeling a bit lost, I never felt like I had that comfort, and I was getting it from friends, from my siblings. And so the idea first came into my head maybe a year before. But maybe that's my like slightly risk averse nature, that I was actually like, no, this is a big deal. I can't do this by myself. I have too much on. And it was only when I really joined a startup that I saw people doing something similar. And I thought to myself, well, if they can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
fair
And I
point.
think like I was wanting to be, I remember for like a whole year prior, I was like, I kind of want to be an influencer. I was like, I was really
Love that.
toying with this idea where I was like, I was looking at content and I was like, I could freaking do this. Like, watch me become like a fashion influencer. And so when you called me, it was like, it just sort of clicked in my head where I was like, oh my God, yes, I've been desperate to do something like content creation.
Yeah.
And now you're a career influencer.
Yeah. You are a career influencer, both of you guys. Well, my second question now to you, Maya, is were you prepared in case if Olivia said no? Were you then going to be wondering what was next? Or were you certain she was going to say yes?
That's
That's,
cute. I don't
ye-
think I've ever asked you that.
yeah, that's a good question. I think I felt a lot of pressure from this person I was speaking to, being like, do it now. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do this straight away. And my flight was taking off in 20 minutes. It was all a bit stressful. I think I just got so excited by thinking about Olivia was the right person. Like I have a big network, right? And I thought about so many people. And so because I was so set on Olivia being the right person, I never once thought she would say no. Like maybe it's because I've worked in sales. I was like, I'll pitch her the idea. Like it's great.
Can't say no.
And I
Oh,
only
yeah.
saw it from my perspective. I was like, why would she not want to do this? So I didn't have a plan B.
Yeah. No,
I
I'm
love
glad to
that.
hear that. I feel like it was just meant to be.
I
Yeah.
totally believe in that. It was meant to be. Well, this is one of my favorite questions I'm now about to ask you both. And it's actually why I feel like we get along really well. And that is, how is it balancing a podcast and a full-time job? My
It's
favorite
hard,
question. One
man.
of them.
I feel like I don't have a life anymore. It's like when I
Oh,
don't work, I do a podcast, and when I podcast, like that's all I do basically. Like it's weekends, it's evenings, it's in between meetings. And I think like I've had this really real realization now where I'm like, oh gosh, we've been doing this for a year. And like all of the hobbies, I used to have so much time, so much free time, which I would therefore have to force myself to fill. And I would come up with all of these other ways of fulfilling my life that I now don't do anymore a year later, because I've filled it with my passion, my hobby, and my job at the same time. I think I've been really struggling with this. I've been talking about that quite a lot because I do believe you can do both and still have other aspects of your life, like without this being the one defining hobby. But it is really hard. I think balancing both is fine, but but then it's everything else that actually I feel like I'm sacrificing.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it is super difficult and probably more than I thought it would be when I first, had the idea of
Yeah.
doing a podcast on the side. Like, no one, you know this because you have a podcast, but no one really thinks about everything that goes into finding speakers, producing an episode, releasing it, doing all the content, etc. I think I'm so grateful that we're two. I know that it makes such a difference having someone else, not only just to like balance the workload, but also to bounce ideas off and kind of
Yeah.
like co-strategize. Yeah, I think we find it super difficult. I think it's like you have to be willing to be flexible. So not, this is my work day, it's my podcast day. It's like something might come up in the podcast or in work, and having both of us allows us to be a bit more flexible. But I love it. So I
Yeah.
do. It's a lot, but I enjoy it.
Yeah. I think it actually also helps give you perspective. So like if you have a really stressful thing coming up at work, it's like, well, it can't occupy that amount of headspace because I
Yeah.
need to make a carousel later. It's like,
Literally, that's how I get through my day. I'm like, I know what I'm going to do tonight.
yeah, my second shift. Do you know what I mean? It just
Yes,
adds
exactly.
perspective. So I
Yeah.
think in a way it actually helps me approach work in a more healthy way.
And also for the healthy point, it makes me sometimes think, wow, I'm loving this. Should I be doing this more at work? Like,
Yeah.
when I really enjoy thinking about the content strategy and the events that we're doing and as speakers, I'm like, wait, so my full-time job should be more like this. It kind of gives you direction
Yeah.
to what you enjoy.
No, it really does. Now, similarly with this next question, obviously I asked you guys what you guys wish you knew earlier in your 20s. In terms of podcasting, what is something you guys both wish you knew sooner, since you guys have been podcasting?
Oh, I feel like it's such a classic of just like, oh, you just have to do it. But it's just so true. It's like, we've talked about this before, where like, I think we spent 3 months thinking about it and like prepping it. Like, we were doing work for it, but it's just nobody was seeing it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, if nobody's seeing it, it's kind of like it's not there. So you got to put it out there and like not try and be perfect, try and be consistent. And I feel like that didn't necessarily click at the time, or rather we maybe knew that, but then we kept making excuses as to why we weren't putting stuff out there. Yeah, I think that sort of remains the main learning for me.
Yeah, I think for me it's similar, but also having a USP. I think not just in terms of who you're targeting, because then you can also build a very like tailored community to the problem you're trying to solve. But also when you
Absolutely.
think about like your passion for what you're doing, it really anchors back to like what is the one core thing I'm trying to achieve with this podcast. And so when it's hard for us to balance everything, we come back to like why are we doing this podcast? Or when we're trying to think about putting out a reel, it's like what is the message we're trying to get across and who are we targeting? And so being so clear on that, I think is like a great like guide for everything that you do.
Yeah, and you guys have come so far since you guys have launched. Now season 3 coming up very soon. Very
Yeah,
exciting.
doing a LinkedIn launch soon as
Oh
well.
God, yeah, we haven't
Oh,
talked about that. Yeah, the big
no.
tip.
I mean, you guys have jumped ahead because my next question is literally, what are you guys up to nowadays? And I guess that's one of them.
Yeah, I guess in terms of the podcast, I have been putting off a LinkedIn launch, but Olivia has finally convinced me. So we're going to be launching on LinkedIn. And then, yeah, I guess other things in terms of the podcast, we're actually delaying season 3. And the reason that we're doing that is focusing a lot on the community aspect. So building a community both in person through events that we're going to be hosting. So watch this space, as well as more content on socials. I think for us, it's really important, as Olivia said before, that we have the community that are then hearing our podcast and getting value from it.
Yeah, I think it's like we made the conscious decision of like, let's not focus on getting loads of views or like if it happens, it happens. But like, it's not the point. The point is to create a lot of good content so that when the time comes, which is kind of now, to grow our audience a bit more, grow our reach, they have something to come to. So I think that's kind of, it's exciting. It's a bit of a different sort of, yeah, gear to what we've had before.
And then I guess outside of the podcast,
Well, me famously nothing
no,
because this is my life. Joking.
I love it.
no, I'd say like career wise, I'm currently leading GTM and I'm really leaning into that. So I'm going to a lot of events where I'm trying to meet other people in GTM, learn more about different strategies, but also different tools. Like I know everyone's talking about Claude at the moment and how I can leverage it to like improve my GTM skills. So I'd say that, and spending a lot more time in the US, well, in New York, which is very exciting.
Your dream.
Yes.
Love that.
Oh, I know. I'm prepping myself for like our breakup when you move to New
No,
York.
no.
What?
Look at us now. It's virtual. We're going to tap
Yeah.
into the US market.
Yeah. Well, this is one of my last few questions, and that is, how has 2026 been for you both so far?
Deep
Take a
breath.
deep breath. Yeah. I think we should all take a deep breath.
I haven't had time to like even reflect.
Even
Yeah.
process. I think like it started off with all the best intentions, as years always do. Uh, and actually, we were both reflecting in our season finale earlier in Jan that even then we already knew this wasn't the
But
start
yeah.
year we were meant to have. And I don't know. I feel like things have gotten better for me, but I'm kind of starting to go back to my objective, which is the whole like regaining some balance, reintroducing some of the other things that make me feel fulfilled outside of the podcast and outside of career. But I can't lie, like I do feel, especially the last few weeks, I think I've been reflecting a lot on just the pace of change at the moment in the career space with like all of these new AI tools coming into place. It's like
Absolutely.
it's the pace of it's not the change itself, because change is great and change has always happened. It's the pace of it which makes you feel just like a little bit destabilized, where you're like, well, it's the first time actually ever that I can't actually picture myself in 5 years, 10 years. Like I just can't, because it's going to be so different. I'm fairly sure it's going to be fine. Uh,
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
90%.
That doesn't sound
Yeah.
confident.
Well, it's just like it's the reality. It's like things are changing so fast, and so I think yes, it's very exciting, but I feel like people have been you know I think people need to talk more about the fact that like it's also a little bit scary, and that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, I mean, last year was quite a tough year, and I think I was constantly like looking at different areas of my life to improve. I think in January, when we did our not so prepared episode about how our start of our year's going, it was somewhat similar. But I actually do think in the last couple of months, I have started to turn things around. And I think my word for
Mm,
the year was fulfillment. And actually, what I think has started to happen is I am feeling more fulfilled by just appreciating what I have and seeing it from a different
yeah,
perspective. So things have been going better at work and I've been progressing. And so
yeah,
rather than, constantly looking elsewhere, it's like, actually, what do I have today and what am I really grateful for? And just noting that down. And same with the podcast. It's so easy to look at all the different podcasts out there, whereas I am very grateful for what we have and what we're building on. So yeah, I'd say this year has been fulfillment with a bit more of chaotic energy, which I think
yeah.
was needed.
That's really good. I'm happy for you both. That's great to hear. Now, we have two more questions left. And the second last question is, what would you both say to aspiring podcast hosts?
It's a lot of work. No, I think like it is a lot of
Yeah.
work, but on that point, like you need to be so passionate
Mm,
about the topic or like the realm in which you choose to build a podcast. It's the same with starting a business, right? If you don't absolutely love it, you are not going to commit, because the exciting moment is launching. The difficult moment is when no one's watching your reels. You have to edit an episode for the 10th time. A speaker has declined you and you don't have anyone to record with. Like all of those moments, you are only going to keep going if you're genuinely passionate about what you do and you do it for yourself.
yeah. No, I completely agree. I genuinely think that is the most important thing, and probably the consistency piece I mentioned earlier as well. Like, I think that's the one thing that I'm proudest of in all of the things that we've done in the podcast, is the fact that we just show up all the time, even if it's a bad day. Um, even if, yeah, like nothing else matters. Like you just show up, and like something I value so much, and like I think it is the upside of doing something like this, of committing to a side hustle. It sort of really reinforces that in you. It really forces it out of you. So
It's so nice. It's like when we first discussed releasing episodes, Olivia was like, "Oh, should we do them weekly?" And I said, "No, let's do them every other week," because
mm,
we both want to be someone who we both want this to be a podcast where we commit and we actually post an episode when we say we do. So if our listeners are expecting an episode every other Tuesday, it's coming.
mm,
And I actually think that was such a great decision
yeah,
for us because we have really committed to that.
That's really good. Yeah, I remember when I first started podcasting, I was uploading episodes once a week, and looking at that right now, balancing a full-time job, I don't know what was I thinking? Yeah, I think I had to take a 6-month break after that from podcasting, because I think it just got way into my head. But no, I completely agree. And it's all about, showing up and just keep moving. I mean, again, like last night I slept for 4.5 hours here right now, but you just have to keep going. I'm passionate about it. I feel great. talking to you guys. I enjoy it as much as you guys do as well.
Amazing.
Well, we're coming to our last question. And this is one of my favorite questions to end the podcast because I didn't ask you guys at the start, what were you both doing at 18, obviously studying at Cambridge. But what would you both say to your 18-year-old selves now? Take a
Gosh,
deep breath.
yeah, me at 18. Wow. I think for me, I would say to my 18-year-old self, because I feel like I was very different back then to where I am now. Be really, like, be confident in yourself and your abilities. Like, you are great. You have a lot to contribute to the world, and it's not necessarily what other people expect from you or what is the right thing to do. It's what like comes naturally to you, and be proud of those kind of like unique traits that you have.
Yeah, I like that. I think that was a realization that came a lot later. And I feel like everyone maybe sort of defaults to this. Is like there are certain things that you are innately good at, and you just assume everyone else is because they come really natural to you. And so leaning into that strength and realizing it is a strength, really kind of building that self awareness of yourself, like that's the best thing you can. Because no, you don't need anyone to be able to do that. Like you just need to observe yourself and just like reflect on how you react to things and how things affect you and what you're attracted to and what you're not. And that is such a valuable skill that you can just start whenever, whatever age, not dependent on anything outside of yourself.
Be self-aware.
Be self-aware.
Be self-aware, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Maya and Olivia, for joining me here today on the Go with Manav. For those who'd like to get in touch with you both, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yes, we have a lot of socials. So for the podcast specifically, we are at Not On My CV Pod, both on Instagram and on TikTok. We also have notonmycv@gmail.com if people want to email us. And then I guess for me personally, probably LinkedIn. Yep, my Mihan. Nothing special there.
Same. LinkedIn, Olivia Neal-Jones. Well, soon we will have our pod on LinkedIn.
Yes, very
Yes. Look forward to seeing that on LinkedIn.
true.
Amazing. And for those watching,
I'm
make sure.
sorry. You should have said you
Wait,
can
what happened? Sorry.
you can listen to us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. The most important part.
Perfect. So those watching, you can see Maya and Olivia's Not On My CV on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And for those watching this video right now, make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. But for those watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Maya and Olivia, for joining me here today. And I will see you guys soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.